All right, so everybody in the back heard that one. Okay, the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Is it true? Is it fair?
Build goodwill and better friendships. But we're all concerned.
And now Nick got that.
We all have a little bit of greed, and we all have a little bit of generosity. What my heart is beating. What I'm about to tell you, I have never told anybody my entire life. Not even my wife, whose birthday it is today. So if you have an opportunity to say happy birthday, say happy birthday. But I'm serious, she doesn't. I was fourth grade, it was a Saturday. And I'm with my dad and another guy. We're in the church basement in Flushing, and there's a whole bunch of boxes. In those boxes are a whole bunch of Tootsie Rolls. The other guy that's with us, he hands me this vest. It's like what you would see a construction worker have. So I put the vest on, and it's got big, deep pockets in the front. Big letters, words that say Knights of Columbus. My grandpa was Knights of Columbus. So we were doing a fundraiser at Knights of Columbus. And so what we did is we went over to the boxes and we grabbed all the Tootsie Rolls and started putting them in those front pockets. We were going to the grocery store at Beaky's, which I just learned that Jane works there now. So Beaky's was the grocery store I used to go to when I was a kid and I was Flushing. So we would stand out front. And the idea is when we got there, we had a bucket. Somebody made a donation in the bucket. We would give them a Tootsie Roll. So we had these pockets full of Tootsie Rolls. And so somebody makes a donation, I give them a Tootsie Roll. It was happening for the whole time. We're smiling, lots of thank yous. Some people did it when they would come in. Before they would come in, they drop $1 in, I give them a Tootsie Roll. Some people would come out, the change they had left over from what they bought in the bucket. I gave them a Tootsie Roll. I'm feeling great about it. And I'm even seeing friends from school going in and out. And I'm feeling so good. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really generous. I'm doing good stuff. I'm so generous. I think I deserve some Tootsie Rolls. Oh, I reached down after I see no one's looking. I reached down into those front pockets and I grabbed a bunch of Tootsie Rolls. And I put them into my personal pockets. We get done. It took about 3 hours. We finish up. We go back to the church basement, we're cleaning up, and we'll put stuff away. And I take the vest off and hand it over to the other guy. And he comes over and says, Nick, you did a great job. That was a lot of fun. Thank you very much. Why don't you take some Tootsie Rolls? My stomach sank and my body filled with shame. And I had 2 pockets full of Tootsie Rolls. That moment has stuck with me my entire life since 4th grade. When the guy told me, why don't you take some Tootsie Rolls? I look up at him. I'm a 4th grader who eats pretty much only candy. I said to him, no, thank you. My dad standing next to me looks at me in bewilderment. And I said, I just don't want any. And it just resonates with me, that feeling of shame to this day. I hate Tootsie Rolls. But I brought some Tootsie Rolls to share with all of you as a reminder that we all have a little bit of greed and we all have a little bit of generosity, but that we need to lift up that generosity, not that greed. And you all kind of see nothing. This is my confession. I meant it, nobody knows.
Well, thank you for for that, Megan. I certainly feel some sense of camaraderie with that sentiment, and I think we all probably have those moments where somewhere in our life we learn from those moments. So terrific story, and with that, please continue your fellowship, and we'll reconvene in just a little while. All right, folks on Zoom, we're going to pause the recording and let you get to some breakout rooms. In some of this lunch here, it had the feel of something that was ready to turn towards fall with the pot pie and food casserole. So maybe that's the signal that the change of season is quickly upon us. So wanted to go ahead and start with the business portion of our meeting here today. And first starting off, this was an acknowledgement that our world saw the departure of a very significant person yesterday. And somebody who has seen so many different changes over the course of her life and her reign. You know, a lot of folks of my generation, I certainly couldn't remember anybody else on the throne except her. And so she was kind of felt almost like a permanent fixture there, but of course nothing is permanent. You know, when she came to the throne as a young woman, a lot of people questioned whether a woman was capable of serving in that capacity. And she certainly, through the course of her 70 years on the throne, put to rest any doubts in that regard. So she was somebody who lived in some ways a very complicated life, that there's a lot of tensions and contradictions. Anytime you talk about an institution like a monarchy or its connection to colonialism, but also the symbolic power of being consistent and steadfast and purposeful. And so from her tenure as a mechanic in World War II to her many, many decades on the throne, she certainly was a remarkable person. And I was struck that last month when we had our official district governor visit, we toasted to the Queen because that's part of our tradition in Rotary, being an international district. And I was struck this morning that the next time we have our annual toast, we'll be toasting to a king. So let's perhaps invite a moment of reflection in honor of her legacy and underscoring the significance for our Canadian friends on the other side of the border. Thank you. On perhaps a lighter note, I want to offer a moment of celebration and appreciation for everyone who took part in the Crim Festival of Races and the Crim Rotary Mile, or the Champagne Corner. We got Rob Jewell down there too. So just maybe inviting a show of hands. Who had a chance to walk or run in the race? All right, quite a few. And who was there as a volunteer? And anybody show up to cheer the folks on? All right, awesome. Well, it's nice to celebrate and to come together in that way. I had a great time doing it. This is my second time being part of it, and just want to offer appreciation again for everybody who had a hand in it, including especially you know, some of the folks that helped to coordinate it from the Rotary end. So that includes Mike in opening up his driveway and his Bloody Mary bar for us. Brian Sanderson, who helped with some of the graphic design of the materials, and our very own Dan Craney, who helped with getting the signs posted. So that was a terrific event. And I don't know if the service committee had wanted to give an update today, or if you prefer to kick it to next time, we'll kick it to next time. But this, as I guess, a preview of coming attractions, that one of the things that we've talked about wanting to do is to more regularly feature the work of the committees with the welcome doggy. And so this is something that we'll be doing periodically as committees have updates to share so that we can be a little bit better informed about what they're up to, as well as opportunities for folks here to become involved with that. So stay tuned. I also want to, maybe before we jump to health and welfare updates, do something that is a follow on from another project that we undertook earlier in the year, and that was the Ukraine concert. And I want to of course, offer thanks for everybody who had a hand in it, but offer a special appreciation to a few Rotarians who are here today. And so they don't know that I'm going to invite them up, but I am going to invite up Marisa and Anne-Marie Van Dyne. And we also have a little something for Rodney Lanty, who couldn't be here today. But just understanding the amount of coordination that went on behind the scenes from FIM in particular to make this happen. It absolutely could not have happened without them spearheading it and doing so much of the logistical support. It was a tremendous experience to be part of it. And so as a little symbol of our thanks, we have a Rotary Ukraine lapel pin. And also one for Marie, who has done so much to keep us all aware and informed of what it really means to be a Ukrainian right now, and to have all those connections to family and friends who are still there. And Marie just done so much to remind us of how small the world is and how important it is to take care of each other. So, I know.
Obviously, it's very personal to me with my family there, and my cousin is there every week. But Anne-Marie in particular, and all the work and effort that she put into having that concert was absolutely tremendous. Thank you.
I knew I was going to get scared. So. Yes, so thank you so much again. And it's just a reminder that we are a local organization, but we're also global. And just the way that folks can come together in that way is a power. Okay, so I now want to shift to announcements from Connie. Where is Connie?
Fine. I just want to put a little bug in everybody here that next Thursday looks like it's going to transform into empty bowl for the entire community. There's about 1,000 people coming through the upcoming shift. But we will have 12 different selections of soup, and we have awesome donations from FIA, Dynamic, Brent over there making the glass products. They are absolutely stunning pieces this year. The auction will go live Monday morning, and there's a QR code. So if you want to do a little early, like, let's say holiday shopping or something like that, what a wonderful opportunity. So I hope you'll be able to enjoy coming to this event. It's always fun. It's great networking. We just love having the community come in. It's sort of like old folks home. We get all of us together now. So I hope you can attend. We look forward to seeing everybody. Thank you so much. Mike Chappie is bringing cheeseburger and paradise soup.
All right, Mike Chappie is definitely known for his soup. All right, so we have a little health and welfare update. We actually have at least two. So wanted to welcome to the world a new baby. Kristen Warburg is joining us via Zoom today, and that's her little one on the left, who is just adorable. And so, Chris, I don't know if you want to say anything.
His name is Caden. And he was born July 16th. So we've had a very busy summer.
So welcome, baby Kaden, and July is a good time to be born. My son was, my older son was born in July, so
Aw,
yeah. So
thank
at some point when you're coming back in person, you know, I'm not opposed to having little babies come visit too. You know, some of us have brought our little babies to different places. They usually steal the show.
I'm
And
sure.
we also have a fur baby here. This is Leonard. This is Marissa Pierce's new little puppy. And Marissa, I think you're also on the line. Anything you want to tell us to introduce us to Leonard?
We just came back from a walk, so we're walking and at Rotary at the same time.
All right, that is the beauty of a hybrid format. You can walk your puppy and go to a Rotary meeting at the same time. And actually, I'll just put this invitation out there. I know sometimes different one of us hear about life events and whatnot. And so if you happen to have something in your life that you want to share, and it could be your new baby or fur baby or grandbaby or whatever happy or momentous thing happen in your life, you know, feel free to send me an email, send me a picture, and we're happy to share that with each other this way. So thank you both for allowing me to feature your important people. Any health or welfare announcements from the floor? Okay. Then any guests to be welcome today? I do want to acknowledge we have Elaine Red, who is here joining us from the chamber, or I want to say the chamber, not the chamber, Flint and Genesee group now. I have to reprogram my brain.
Yes.
Who's a guest of our featured speaker today. Any other guests on Zoom? All right, doesn't look like. Well, so I do want to let you know that we had planned a joke duel for today. And we will have it, but it won't be today. That we had one of our participants had to quarantine due to a COVID exposure and didn't want to share that with the rest of us. So that person will reschedule hopefully for later this month. Thanks for your patience with that. In the meantime, if there's anybody who hasn't already said that they want to be part of it, I've still got a few more slots, so feel free to let me know if that's of interest. And on that note, I know we have one of our inaugural participants here today. And so, Lynn, I'm going to invite you up here. Now, it's not nearly as fancy as the official Rotary lapel pin, but for a jokester Rotary lapel pin, it's probably about right. So thank you so
Well,
much.
thank you. Oh, it actually says jokester on it.
It really is. All right, and that brings us to our 50-50. So Fred, will you come up and make sure we have a real legit raffle today? Perhaps past President Kyle can stir the pot.
Would you like I'll let
Would the stirring of the pot be a prelude to his coming back?
Well, you know, it's been a while since Kyle Tree had a few weeks off, and so I didn't want you to not have the opportunity to come up front.
For third place, 84655.
Gary?
655.
All right, Terry. Wait, you're with a Fred. One of Fred's tickets. Of course.
I'm sorry, there's CJ. I can feel an election. We're not on their record.
Got it, right, but
Keyword is get.
yeah.
Second place, 84647.
Oh, Rob Bennett.
Second place. Say what you will about it, but the Attorney General runs slow, but he hasn't gotten it yet.
First place, the chance to buy a drink at Art Walk tonight, 84664.
Oh.
6-4.
Oh, Kai, okay. How are the both people doing?
And if they
that?
all right. This looks bad. Not mine. Oh, you're gonna get a lot of mine. There we go. All right.
All right. Grown. Another big raffle. All right. So I'm going to invite to introduce our guest speaker. We have Kristen, who again is joining us from Zoom. And so I'm going to turn it over to her.
Thanks so much. Hello, everyone. Well, today we'll be hearing from Christina Johnson, the Chief Operating Officer of the Flint and Genesee Group. Now, she joined the Flint and Genesee Group in 2008 as a contractor and has worked her way up to her current position. Christina has a background in the arts and in community organizing, which has given her a unique perspective when it comes to community and applying practical and creative problem-solving skills, which is very refreshing, I think, and I'm sure comes in very handy. So to give us an update on everything that's going on with Flint and Genesee Group, as well as Forward Together, the countywide vision for economic prosperity for Genesee County, please welcome Christina Johnston.
Well, this is fun. Toasters and all. Thank you for having me. As was mentioned, I'm Christina Johnson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at the Flint and Genesee Group. For those of you that don't know and have heard references to our branding change, you probably know us as the Flint and Genesee Chamber of Commerce, the Genesee Regional Chamber. We've had a couple of iterations of names, and we have come to be the Flint and Genesee Group, which is an umbrella type organization to 4 divisions, one of which is the Flint and Genesee Chamber. So that still exists in the traditional chamber sense. Explore Flint and Genesee, which is a Convention and Visitors Bureau division. Flint and Genesee Education and Talent, which houses after school programs, Flint Promise, Teen Quest and Summer Youth Initiative, as well as Flint and Genesee Economic Alliance, which handles traditional economic development work, works to bring jobs and investment to Genesee County. We are a county-wide organization, so you'll hear me talk today about county statistics. And hopefully my job today is to give you information. You're all in positions of influence. You have, whether you are volunteering at an event, as a volunteer at a parade, or making decisions in a technical or formal capacity about distribution of resources. Hopefully you'll find yourself in this presentation and see some data that can influence your decision making about how you spend your time, your resources. And so I'm hoping to give you a perspective today that you can take forward. By the way, Forward Together is a plan, although I don't like to call it a plan. It's essentially a report with some suggestions that came together a couple of years ago. We brought in some outside support from a contractor who does community plans all over the country. Which was really refreshing to kind of hear how we compare to other places in the country. They started with some qualitative data. They put together a data fact book. There's a website as well that you can, I think the last slide, that you can check all of this information out. They looked at that quantitative data, and then they pulled together many focus groups in specific areas related to economic development, while also pulling together a summit where we invited anyone and everyone across the county. We had about 250, 300 people attend that and try to provide their perspective on what a healthy economy looks like in Genesee County. So this is kind of a culmination of that. Unfortunately, the timing for launch of the official plan and its completion was July 2020. Not an ideal time to roll something out publicly and want to do a road show like this and share where we were. But here we are today, and what we can do for you today is share some of what we learned then as compared to some progress that's happened since the original launch. I'm going to jump right in. So one of the things we set out to do, most importantly, was to create a common vision for economic prosperity. This was co-developed in partnership with the Flint and Genesee Group, the chamber at the time, the city of Flint, and Genesee County. We did that intentionally, knowing that no one entity is in charge of or responsible for the outcomes of the greater economy of the county, nor could any one of these entities, plus many others,
really make that change all by itself. So together is in there for a reason. And what we said was we need to all be headed in the same direction, using our resources, our programs, and our partnerships to the same end. What we agreed to, that our vision would be in 2040, Genesee County would be a top 5 community in Michigan based on jobs, talent, livability, and equity. Why top 5 and what does that mean? Genesee County is the 5th most populous county out of 83 counties in the state of Michigan. And so we thought, by that logic, we should look at some different metrics and see how we compare to other counties across the state to figure out how far away are we from being in that top 5 status. So that's what we did. And it was nice to have a very measurable vision. We can all kind of look at that and give us context. They'll hear a little bit about how sometimes things look like you're making progress, and the context of the people around you and communities around you might not be as fast as others. So we had agreed, I start with the next step slide, because when we launched it, sort of soft launched it, we said, here's the document, we're going to work the strategies that come from it, we're going to track the progress, and we're going to adapt and readjust. And here today is that second step. We're tracking that progress, and we're sharing it with you so that we can all adapt and readjust to what we're seeing. There's that website too. Feel free, I think it's at the end. Not going to spend a lot of time here because this isn't the exciting part, but we identified 6 key areas of interest that if we found solutions for interventions, programs, partnerships, and put resources behind, that could influence some of those key economic indicators. Turning community challenges into economic opportunities. Our consultants refer to this as jujitsu. So when you say something is a challenge for our community, you are also saying that it's an opportunity for a company or a person to have great impact here. Continuing to focus on business attraction and retention, sort of a no-brainer. Evaluate and expand tourism options that brings in new dollars to our community and stimulates our local economy. Grow and coordinate community programs. We learned that we have a lot of community programs in our community, more than most, and we needed to look at 2.0 versions. How do we evolve the things that we have and we've already invested in? Build great places. This is really important to our municipal partners who might be looking at infrastructure, neighborhoods, housing, all of these different pieces. And investing in 21st century economic infrastructure. At the time that we composed this, there was no such thing as ARPA dollars or other federal aid that could be invested in these things. But we could see that those investments would pay dividends if made. And now we have some resources to do that. This is where we're going to spend most of our time. Okay, so this is a lot here. Let me break it down. On the table. Oh, yes, you have copies on the table, so it's easier to read. We're going to spend some time on these 5 indicators. When we looked at this and we said, we've got to compare ourselves to the rest of the state, and we want to see where we rank in 83 counties. We said, let's look at average wages, net in-migration, educational achievement, gross domestic product growth rate, and family poverty rate. As those 5 things that we certainly could look to see how we compare, but also measure consistently over time, and that we thought were good indicators of economic prosperity. So some good news. We have seen an increase in average wages. Also note, sometimes the dates they're important in here. We aim to get the most recent data, but not all data sets give you the same year. So just make note of those dates. And so you'll see a then of 2019 as compared to 2021. We did see an increase in wages. So we went from 879 to 957. This is good news. It put us in the rankings, however, going from 22nd to 24th. So while we had improvements in our average wages, companies were paying more, we declined in the rankings, which means other communities grew faster than us. Other communities in that top 5, who are we looking to catch up to? Oakland County, Wayne County, Washtenaw County, Midland County, and Macomb County. The good news here is that we're not so far off from that top 5. If we added $203 per week, we would be at number 5. Now that means none of them grow. But that is a doable thing. If we were to attract jobs, the right kind of job, if we were to see influences on talent demands that increase wages, these are things that could move us up in that ranking. So that is something that I think there's some positive movement for, but we cannot get complacent because as compared to others, we are not moving as fast. Net in migration, sneak peek. I'm going to tell you two things that I think are the most important areas of all of these things, and net in migration and educational achievement. These are my opinions. We saw back in 2018, we were losing about 1,000 people. This is different than population. This has to do with people leaving the community versus those coming in. And we were at a loss of about 1,000. New data sets, new years that we can find available, things change. We actually looked at a loss of 2920 over a 3 or 4 year period there, 2016 to 2019. In both cases, it put us at 78 out of 83 counties. Very bad. The state of Michigan is 4 in the context of the United States, and we are at the low end of 83 counties. That tells us that we have a lot of work to do to attract people, to retain people, and to stem this loss. We've got an aging population. We have people retiring, moving on to other communities or out of state, and we really are going to see ourselves in great need of a qualified and growing workforce if we want to be attractive to business. Net immigration too, I'll give you some of the other counties. Livingston County is at the top end, not far away. So if you think about that, that it, in a proximity sense, we could get there. They see an increase of almost 6,000 people, and we're at a decrease. We would need to add about a little over 5,000 people happy in the plus to get to number 5. Also in those numbers, Ottawa County, Allegan, Barrie, and Grand Traverse. I will note that I was digging in on this and looking at those county rankings and wanted to see who was doing better, who was succeeding, and can we make some guesses as to why? Did they have some intentional campaigns or efforts, or did they bring a certain type of business into town? What I noticed, most of this is just observation. I won't say it's all causation, but was a lot of folks seem to have moved up north. We saw population and net immigration increases up north or out of state. And so that tells me a little bit about maybe some COVID. It's a little bit pre-COVID in these numbers, but we're seeing people kind of go. I saw also in those particular areas an increase in educational achievement. These may have been some folks who moved up north who are maybe higher educated and higher wage earners. Their numbers also went up in average, not in average wages actually. Their educational attainment went up, but their average wages stayed the same, which tells me they probably weren't working. They probably were or being added to their community. Okay, the next one, educational attainment. I said there's 2 that are my favorite. In educational attainment, we saw 1%. I will note that this is post-secondary degree and does not count certification. I would guess that Genesee County has a higher likelihood of having more people with certification based on the types of industries that we have here. When I was working with the state of Michigan, they said you can guess, it's really hard to track certification, about 7%. So you can add 7% to this, probably low, I think a low estimate on where we are. But just to give you further context, the state of Michigan has an initiative called 60 by 30, where they want to see 60% of Michiganders by the year 2030 with a post-secondary, either a credential, a degree, or some type of certification. And so we were pretty far off from the state goal. They've got a shorter horizon as well. And when I look at other communities, what I see that are headed in that direction, doing well, Washtenaw County is number 1 with 64%. Oakland County, Leelanau, Kalamazoo, and Grand Traverse. There's 2 things that I see in that list: places where there's really large universities and places that are a little bit higher wealth areas, higher cost of living, more expensive housing. So your assumption could be folks who had higher educational attainment could afford to live in those areas and have moved there. So we would need to gain about 17 percentage points to reach number 5, and we're pretty far off from the state's goal of 60%. But now that we've got some resources behind that and can align with some programming that they are launching, that's really helpful. I gave this presentation this morning at a Flint Promise authority meeting, and it was really exciting for me to use that as an example of where net and migration and post-secondary achievement kind of converge. For those of you that don't know, Flint Promise is the opportunity for students who go to a school and graduate from a school in the city of Flint, who live in the city of Flint, to go to U of M, Mott, or Kettering at no cost. So removing that financial barrier for folks in greatest need to go on and help us increase these numbers and potentially attract a population who wants to take advantage of that or retain those folks who live here. So I love that program example, but we've got lots of other programs that help with educational attainment that come from the state and our local institutions who put a lot behind that. So it's all of our job to promote those. And even if you're not in the education sector, to understand that the trajectory of our students and their success is imperative to all of us. GDP growth rate, I want to acknowledge this is growth rate, not just GDP. So this is how much we're moving. And we actually saw our greatest gains in this area. So businesses are doing pretty well. We're seeing our community grow at faster rates. We moved up from 49th to 20th in the rankings. This was the most positive movement we saw in any of our indicators in those rankings. So we see significant growth. The other folks in that category in top 5, Oscoda, Ionia, Menominee, Mackinac, and Saukee, a tiny little place, very low population. So when they have one big development, their GDP growth rate goes up a lot. What's notable is we're by far, in comparison to those, much larger. And so to be on the move, in a rate that's not that far off from their growth rate is good. That means that we're doing pretty good in terms of like that business piece. Family poverty rate, this one's interesting. 12.9% now as compared to 15%. So this is a case where a decline in your number actually is a good thing to see a green down there. We've had some improvement in family poverty rate. Unfortunately, we are 78. We were in 78 and we've moved to 81st out of 83 counties. So family poverty is, while somewhat improving, we are not improving fast enough, and we're at the very bottom there of the rankings in the state. Family poverty is a symptom of a whole lot of other things. And that's why I say if we moved more people here and increase educational attainment, you pull wages up, you become more attractive to business. And ultimately those things will pull people out of poverty. But there's so many more factors with poverty. And if anybody could figure that out, they'd win a Nobel Prize or something. And we all work toward that. But it's really important that we understand we've got an uphill battle here. So those are the rankings, but we also try to look at the state of our people in ways that are not necessarily comparative to other counties, but just give us a picture of who we are and where we stand. So some things, and I want to just state here, some of this stuff can be a little dismal. For most of the people that I've given this presentation to, they are leaving the room sort of recharged and feeling motivated. And I hope you can leave feeling like, okay, I know where I stand, I can see where I fit, and I'm going to do my part to influence change. This is not to make you feel that this is all sad and terrible. There's actually some points of promise and some points of pride in here, so I urge you to look for those as well. But I will start with some negatives and I'll close with some positives. Economic mobility. So economic mobility is the likelihood of somebody who's born in the bottom 20% of a socioeconomic status to move to the upper 20%. In 2014, it was about, 2014, it was 6.8% of that population were likely to move up. Great. Fortunately, we've declined. So 5.9% in 2020 were actually likely to do that. So we've actually gotten less likely to come out of poverty. Third grade reading proficiency, this is in 1 year's time, and this one is daunting. We went from 41% in 2019, where third graders were at a proficient reading level, to 2020 being only at 36.9. The dramatic drop in 1 year, not a surprise. We know from kids not being in in-person school that there was likely going to be some learning loss. And also I'll note third grade reading is representative of probably just about every educational metric. Reading is just kind of one of those samples that people use, not only to represent education, but to represent predictions of the likelihood of success for young people. So this one is very important to us. There's going to be a lot of work to catch some kids up. And so when you see initiatives or opportunities to volunteer, work of the Literacy Network, there's ways in which that we can try to come back from this. I heard this morning from Steve Tunnicliffe at the GISD that not only, yes, we all experience this and there's learning loss everywhere, Genesee County is faring a little bit worse. Our numbers are a little worse than they were elsewhere. So this is something that's super important to our community. Total jobs are down a little bit, but I don't want to spend a lot of time here because I think what happened with total jobs is during the pandemic, a lot of businesses could not find people, could not fill positions or had downsized or figured out more efficient ways to operate. And sometimes had maybe eliminated positions that they had before. And we're also seeing such a great need for talent right now that even if there are fewer jobs, the ones we have are actually, they're struggling to fill. This doesn't feel as much of an economic pinch to have fewer jobs. It's actually in that we need more people to fill the ones that we have. Median household income is good. This is moving up. And we did see those little bits of improvement in the family poverty rate. So what we can say is it's moving up, but we need it to move up faster. Those average wages will help. So this is somewhat of an indicator of that. We also wonder a little bit about both with the family poverty rate in here, there's a little bit of the stimulus dollars may have sort of falsely inflated a few things. We may see these things fall back down over time. Workforce participation rate is down. We were at 58% in 2018. We're down to 55.8% in 2020. We don't know exactly what's going on there. It could be that folks decided, you know, a parent was staying home with kids while they were in remote school, and the household has adjusted and determined that they don't need, you know, more than one income. There's a whole host of things that could be happening here. But we do know that this is very important to our economic success. It's something that when we try to bring businesses to our county through our economic alliance, they are looking they look at site readiness and look at physicality of our communities and the sites that are available. But more than that, they are very, very much looking at talent and that talent shed. So how many people are available? How highly educated are there? And what does that mean for the types of jobs they're bringing here? What does that commuter pattern look like? And so this is something that we stand to benefit if we can increase educational attainment, we can increase the number of people, we can get the people that we have more ready and involved in the workforce. That's attractive to business. SNAP recipient household is down. This is a good thing. This is another negative but positive. But I again would say there may be a little bit of stimulus inflation in here that we could see this maybe fall back down over time. Here's a shining light in this data, private establishments. One of the things that we learned from our consultants is when they did all of their focus groups, they said, we just kept hearing over and over how resilient Flint and Genesee is. Everybody says you're resilient, you've got grit. These are the words that people use to describe ourselves. I hated it because I've heard that forever and I didn't know what it meant. How do we know? We sense it, we feel it, but what is a measurement? I'm a data person, give me some numbers. And they said, you can tell because when times are tough over history, when we've looked at your movement of business versus the economy's down, Genesee County tends to create businesses. Not everyone does that. Me, I'm well, that's logical. People would do that. They're finding their own way. It doesn't happen. And so that's something that's a point of pride for us. That's something that we can speak to. That's a measurement of resiliency. And we did see this change. We saw a very positive change in 2020. I can sense it in my own organization. We actually built out a small business help desk because of the demands and the needs that small businesses were kind of popping up and coming out of the woodwork and needed those supports to formalize and to grow. And so this is a real opportunity in our county. Okay, so some key takeaways. And by the way, this is on the back of the handout as well. So if you need a refresher on what to do with all this information, certainly draw your own conclusions, but I'll give you some of mine. So we can see economic growth is evident. Our GDP growth rate is growing. This represents the county's biggest positive movement in those rankings of the 5 indicators tracked. So that's good news. However, the county's growth is not as fast as other counties in the state. Improvements in average wages, educational attainment, and family poverty rate did not result in improved rankings among the 83 counties. We've got to catch up. We've got to move fast. Also, county residents in the lower income brackets are not experiencing the economic gains and are on a trajectory to fall farther behind and remain in poverty. We can see this in economic mobility. Individuals born in that bottom 20% are less likely to come up to the top. Our third grade reading proficiency is one of those great predictors, and that has dropped almost 10% in 1 year, from 2019 to 2020, bringing that rate to only 36.9%. And fewer people are participating in the workforce. A lot of these have to do with people. And so when we think about economic development, we often think about business, but we have to think about our people. I gave you my sneak peek. I think that the indicators that could change our trends are to lift our rankings in net and migration and educational attainment. These are big lists, but the good news is we've made some investments in those areas. And there's lots of folks in this room and in many of the other rooms representing this data who have the ability to influence quality of life, to influence the housing stock they have in their communities, the sense of place they create with the small businesses, or the activities and events. We've got so many events just in Flint, like in the last 3 weeks. I've heard like 4 things just for today and tomorrow in Flint. So these are all really great things. These are things that draw people in. We've got to keep doing those, and we've got to tell people how enjoyable it is to be a resident here. We have visitors from hospital residencies, AmeriCorps workers, interns, college students. These are folks we want to embed here. We want them to stay here. We want that investment that was made in them in this community to stay here and support the businesses. So there's a lot we can do in that space as well. The reason why I say these two, and I mentioned it before, having more people in Genesee County is attractive to employers. The companies and the residents support the tax base, which gets reinvested in those towns, cities, schools, and the infrastructure that in turn improve quality of life. It's a big cycle. And we need those people and those businesses here that can go back into all the whole thing and make it all grow even more rapidly. And when people have higher levels of education, they're more likely to make more money. Businesses with higher skills and higher paying jobs are going to be attracted to our county for that workforce. The average wages improve, and ultimately household poverty declines more significantly. Those are those 2 factors I think you can pull around all the rest of those numbers. So there's a lot of work to do. And again, I don't mean to make this all sound dismal and daunting. There's great opportunity here. We presented this to our board, and our board representative from McLaren made the comment, I am not discouraged. I am determined. We have to be determined, is what he said. And he said, you know, in the hospital industry, we've got an aging population. We can see the need for healthcare growing, and we've got to do something to get the workforce here. Now, that's just one industry. It's an important industry to all of us. But it's all of these industries that have this need. And while we might have always looked at those economic investment numbers and jobs numbers as our points of success or areas for growth, it's actually about our people that will pull all of those things along. So groups like this are doing a great job of working on those things. You all have your circles of influence and places you go. And if you can keep this data in mind as you work with your neighbors and your coworkers and colleagues, this is a way that we can all be working towards the same goals. I'm going to end where I started with next steps. We're working those strategies. I could give more examples of all those 6 areas of projects and programs going on. You probably can think of some that you yourself maybe have influenced. We're tracking that progress. You can see that here. This is a short period of time to track progress. So we'll say that most of the time you look at these things over 5-10 years. We do have a horizon out there of 2040, but we can't just wait to look at these things, or else we'll find ourselves even farther behind if we weren't paying attention. So stay tuned into that website for further updates as we continue to move forward. And now we adapt and we adjust. We can see some shortcomings. We can see some pressures on our community that have come from outside sources and pandemics and policy and all these different things, some for positive and some for negative. And so now we as a community continue to adjust for those. And that's all I have for you. Are there any questions?
See, this is, the data is for the county. Do you also have similar data for the communities within the county?
So we can sometimes pull certain data sets by zip code, which isn't always directly aligned with the municipal boundary or school board or school zone. I can't get it on all of them. You can look at it. I actually looked at some demographic breakdowns. So for example, those private establishments have grown. How many of those were minority business? Over what period of time were we seeing that happen? And so we have pulled in and dug in on some things. The reading proficiency. It's one little piece of the puzzle, but we've also learned that there's not only more openings, but also more young people going into early childhood education. That these are good trajectory and promising ways to get out of that slump we're in. But we need to do more. So we are parsing out data to the degree that we can. I don't have it specific. Sometimes we can get Flint, sometimes because it's the kind of center point, urban center, we can get a little bit more there, but it's difficult and we have to go by it.
This is great to see because I think, I was involved in a little bit at the beginning of this, so it's good to see what's happening going forward. I think the best thing about Forward Together is that 20 years ago, there would have been 3 different plans. The city, the county, the business community would have not been working together, they've been siloed. And so I'm just curious, even outside of this plan, what have been some of the benefits of that kind of a collaboration, big picture, working together across those stakeholders?
Yeah, and that's actually exactly how we came together. We could see the need to do this. We also found out that the city was working on an economic development plan, the county was working on a plan, and we thought, wow, we gotta get this all organized. So that is the origin of this. Over the time period from when we started planning, literally during the planning period, there were elections. Some of the key people that we agreed to work on this together changed. And those types of things are really, that lack of continuity is really disruptive. And we really want anybody sitting in those seats to align with a plan. And so that's been a great grounding, as we have even changed maybe more than once some of the folks that we worked on this with. Certainly the mayor, county commissioners, had a couple of different chairs of the county commission sit in the seat. And so it's been good to be able to reference the work before them, and it does not always happen. So I would say the benefit has been continuity. And I continue to work with them and remind them, here's where we are. You're making decisions about ARPA dollars and a whole lot of other things, and how can we make sure that this is in your mind? I want to reference to the zip code data. This is something that was really interesting. I gave this presentation in Grambling Township, and we talked a lot about, did these numbers represent Grambling Township? Did they fare better than the averages? And probably they do in many cases. However, they really have a tax base based on business. They have a lot of businesses and infrastructure for that, with a smaller tax base in the residency. And so when we talked about that, we said, okay, but those businesses you're attracting, those empty buildings you're trying to fill, and all that investment in infrastructure, they all require people. And they're going to pull people from a pretty broad radius. Some of their jobs are very high skilled, and they're going to need people who are trained and educated. And we have examples of businesses in Grambling Township that have actually put up a satellite location in Livingston County because they couldn't find the educated workforce for project management and engineering. We don't want that. We don't want them to be lured away. We need to be thinking about not just any one community, but how they are all kind of symbiotic, and how computer patterns and just the way people are and the way they work indicates that your success could be dependent on the success of somebody else. And that was very noteworthy, and something that I continue to share with municipalities who are kind of looking at their own data and give them context, just like we have context for the rest of the state.
One thing in the data that I didn't see is, where do retirees fall in? What percentage of retirees do we have in this community? How does that affect the whole economy? They're not going to go to work, and a lot of them are those highly qualified people, but so where do they fall into?
We look at the demographic data, and we can see that we do have a significantly older population in Genesee County, many of which are retired. We also looked at the age with which people continue to work. And what we saw, particularly in men more than women, is that they're staying in the workforce longer. That's good news for us because we're retaining that talent, but the bad news is we don't have a lot coming in. And so when we look at age information, certainly there's contributions to the economy, or you have maybe some more wealth, or purchasing from small businesses. But we need that workforce that's going to ultimately support them, especially healthcare needs as things get older, but also to replace them in the workplace. Or else we're going to see, and I already feel it a little bit in we've got a regional leadership council and the membership of that group. As those leaders start to retire and they pass the torch on, there's a different style of working. And so it's really an important demographic. We're seeing them stick around a little bit longer. But we've got to be able to give them the opportunity to retire in peace and let that next group come in and take their place.
Two things come to mind, what you highlighted in terms of educational achievement and retaining young people to the workforce is figures in enrollment in our local colleges. How are they doing? And then what is the total GDP in Genesee?
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I would look it up, whether it's something that I can share. It's really not too bad in the scheme of things in terms of as compared to other parts of the state, but on the educational enrollment, those are declining numbers across the board at all of our colleges and universities. To be fair, that's true everywhere. The pandemic was not just for K-12 students, but was not the most conducive environment for college students either. Many of the jobs that they might be going into, think about not, some of the very hands-on kind of trainings that they're getting. And that might not work very well in Zoom format. So we did see that. I can say from our Flint Promise, we've got coaching that is sort of there to help these students succeed today and succeed. And we had to really be thoughtful and even adjust for some kids who needed to take a break, needed to produce some of their credits. And so there's a concern there for the ongoing enrollment, and it's to all of our benefit to support those institutions.
Final question.
I don't, but I would love to know that. I wonder if we can find out from their alumni association. I can see if we can get that data from them. I'm curious about something building out some talent retention efforts. We have twin interns program in the summer where we take interns who are working in nonprofits or other institutions. We try to embed them, give them community tours and leadership training and all those things. And as we build out that into a more robust strategy around talent retention and attraction, I'd love to know that and see if that's a number we can influence. I can tell you. They do, and they don't stay as much here. And a lot of their co-op experiences are not in Genesee County. So their model is such that you take a semester and work elsewhere. Many of those business partnerships are not in Genesee County. And if you're likely to go to a business and work there permanently based on your internship, that means we're taking that sort of educational asset and it's going somewhere else. That's a challenge for us. But Kettering's role is to do what they do, create great engineers and not necessarily to think about how those are staying here, though I'm sure that they care about that very much. Their top priority is to work on that educational quality. So something that we as a community can kind of wrap around that and see how we can be supportive and connect those young people to our people.
Well, thank you so much. I think of all the things that you shared, the part that I'm most struck by is that notion of interdependence, that to take on these challenges, we have to all be pulling in the same direction and realize that our success is connected to the next person. So thank you very much for that. Thank you for all the Rotarians who showed up today in person or on Zoom. Very glad to have you all here. I want to say a special thank you to Kristen for introducing our speaker today. It's lovely to see you. And look forward to be able to see you back here when time permits. In the meantime, wishing you and your new little one the best. Thank you so much, Nick. I will not look at Tootsie Rolls the same way after this. Thank you, Jim, for setup and takedown and making sure the space was prepared and ready for us. To Terry, as always, for staffing the sign-in table and to Ken for taking the bulletin notes today. Hope you'll be back here next Friday, that we're going to have another fabulous presentation, this time by Angela Hood Bogart, who is from Flint and Genesee Literacy Network. So if your interest was piqued about educational attainment and those third grade reading scores, bring some of those thoughts and questions with you next week, because that's a very natural follow on in terms of what can we be doing to take on this challenge together. Lastly, I want to encourage you all to enjoy the wonders of the weekend. We've got a beautiful Friday afternoon. It's what Bikes on the Brick, so one of those local events. I think my guys are probably going to be hanging out there in a little bit. Whatever you're doing this weekend, I hope it's safe. I hope it's enjoyable. And remember to imagine Rotary, what it means, not just for you and your community, but also our whole world. So thank you for that. And we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody on Zoom. Lovely to see you all.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Take care.
Bye-bye.